Something Weird and DistribPix presents Ron Sullivan: The Early Years, which is a collection of 3 films, all of them directed by Ron Sullivan. Who is Ron Sullivan? Well, that's the real name of director Henri Pichard. Henri? That's the first time I've said it like such a fucking idiot. Henri Pichard. Henri Pichard. Blip, blip, blip. Well, that's the real name of director Henri Pichard. Henri Pichard. He wasn't even French. He saw Henry Paris, aka Radley Metzger, and he decided to rip off his name. His name's Ron Sullivan. He's just a guy, American guy. Anyway, that's the real name of director Henri Pichard, an absolute goat of the adult film world with titles like Public Affairs, one of my personal favorites, Mascara, and Babylon Pink on his CV. He's a legend of porno filmmaking, and collected here are 3 of his earliest movies. Now, real quick packaging. Inside you get a booklet with essays written, or an essay, written by Ashley West of the Rialto Report. As you can see, we've got words. Words and images. Titties. Words and images, yay! And then also in this rigid side loader is the actual films in a slipcover. We like to be flamboyant around here, so we put our slipcovers in rigid side loaders so that we can be extra fancy. And then here we have the standard, just Blu-ray, burp, burp. You open it up, and inside, the insert has advertisements for the films that are included, but it's not really an insert you would flip around and or anything like that. It doesn't have any special insert artwork. And that's the packaging. Woo! Oh my gosh. Lust Weekend was the first of Sullivan's early productions. Released in 1967, Lust Weekend is about a cult of sexual deviants who kidnap a young couple and force them to do mildly strange sexual acts. They also seem to be murderers, but that's never really explored to any great degree. I mean, it is technically a major part of the plot, but I can't say it's really explored at all. It's just kind of a thing that happens. This thing's a mess. That said, this is actually a very pretty film, and especially in the back half features some very well-composed images. It's also pretty boring, and not a whole lot happens. Part of the problem is in the audio, which was apparently abandoned in favor of a pretty Spartan dub that makes the whole enterprise feel like a particularly saucy silent film, scored to the music the Finleys would use in that trilogy, the Flesh trilogy. That music just kind of stapled on here. My biggest takeaway from Lust Weekend is the cast. I love this weird little gang of deviants, even if I don't find most of their hijinks all that intense. Just look at these two. The whole group is stylish and weird. This lady looks like Scarlet Witch. This dude's sunglasses are comically small. And what's with this guy's sandals? Man, it's just a fun gang of degenerates. I wish they were in a more interesting film. Speaking of which, 1968's The Bizarre Ones, like Lust Weekend, deals in a cute sort of ignorant sexual depravity. This one does feature some proper torture, which apparently is the bread and butter of self-proclaimed swingers in this world. The plot concerns a tall hitchhiker who's essentially kidnapped by a group of swingers after being picked up by our main girl Deidre, who's one of the swingers, and is bad but also not the worst.
Should I be afraid of you?
Well, you don't have to be afraid of me, sweetheart. I don't need to rape my women. They come to me.
Like Lust Weekend, there's not much more to delve into on the story front, though there is more weirdness through and through. At one point, Deirdre is just rolling an unlit candle down her friend's chest repeatedly, which I guess isn't as weird as the eggs in Lust Weekend, but still, kind of just an odd thing to do. Elsewhere, 2 male swingers use some sort of machine on a female swinger, which seems to cause pleasure, but if turned too high, it would kill her. We never find out what the machine is or what it's supposed to do, but it's certainly befitting of the bizarre title. In the booklet, it's described as a rape machine, but what exactly makes it such a device is unclear.
Can you make it go that fast?
I don't even know how you would force that on somebody. It's such a cumbersome... It doesn't matter. It's all bullshit. Despite a few arresting images and some truly stellar pairs of tits, there's not much to the bizarre ones. It's a pretty basic affair. Things do escalate to a deadly degree, but when that moment comes, it's so belabored that it lacks a real punch. Still, I'll be the first to disagree with those who prefer Lust Weekend over the bizarre ones. I think the latter is far more interesting, thanks in large part to the ridiculous nature of its plot. I do wish we were given a character as memorable as Lust Weekend's head broad Persephone, but what you gonna do? Scorpio 70, the third and final film of the set, is the only one in color. It was also Ron Sullivan's first film in color. It also sports far more dialogue, which helps since it's also a murder mystery inspired by Roman Polanski's Knife in the Water.
That's about as absurd as asking Mae West to play a drummer boy.
Released appropriately enough in 1970, the film follows a married couple who board a small yacht and wind up engaged in sexual intrigue and drug smuggling, all leading to our main hairy dude's death. That's not a spoiler, by the way. The film opens up with him being pulled out of the water a la Sunset Boulevard. It's an interesting enough start, but it sadly doesn't all gel as a cohesive narrative.
So she decides to command the oceans to flood over the continents. But then this dyke comes to the rescue.
It does get bonus points, however, for showing off the gorgeous Jennifer Wells as a sultry seductress. So you can check it out for that.
Oh, well, didn't you read the brochure? Days full of sun and fun.
The extras here aren't anything too exciting, but part of that's to be expected. After all, Sullivan died back in 2008, so you shouldn't expect, like, an updated interview or anything like that. Of the archival materials, in addition to an image gallery, we have a feature-length interview with Sullivan that was originally presented by the Rialto Report podcast, as well as a 44-minute video interview with Sullivan, also conducted by the Rialto Report's Ashley West. Both of these were after Sullivan had dealt with throat cancer, so he can be a bit of a challenge to understand, but that doesn't stop these from being fascinating interviews.
To us, that was all part of the production.
The only real drawback is that there's a lot of repetition between the two, but For those interested, the podcast interview is also available through the Rialto Report's website as a text document. That's actually how I took it in. It was much easier to just read it. There's also an 18-minute interview with producer Don Walters, who was a close friend and collaborator of Sullivan's. He gives us some valuable insight into the kind of guy Sullivan was and provides some history. For example, I hadn't realized that Ron Sullivan was a producer on Putney Swope. Finally, if you go to the extras section under Scorpio 70, you'll find an interview Ashley West conducted with that film's star, Michael Haynes. You can listen to the Ron Sullivan interview over any of the three films, but this one is specifically available with Scorpio 70, essentially giving you 2 commentary tracks with 4 total options to listen. So, the Ron Sullivan track on all 3 films, and then also on Scorpio 70, the Michael Haynes track. 4 options. Overall, I don't know, I'm sort of disappointed with this set, if only because I felt as though I was promised films of a more ridiculous nature than what we actually got. Instead, these are pretty boring exercises in roughy filmmaking. They're not bad per se, just not terribly exciting, and nowhere near as good as Pochard's notable films from the 1980s. I don't know. I might just be beyond roughies of the nudie cutie era. American smut of this time period can be great, but it just so often pales in comparison to the bonkers material being put out by the Japanese and Europeans during the same decade. Or if we're going for the at-home stuff, the Finleys. We're putting out far more interesting stuff. The Flesh trilogy is amazing. So much better than these films. Still, these are worthwhile curios, and I'm glad I got a chance to watch the early work of a master pornographer in such great detail. This is definitely a release for completists. Definitely not me. This is definitely a release for completists, though all 3 films make for a great background visual while listening to the Rialto Report. That's all I got. Go watch a movie!
It's gonna take me some time to give you all that is mine. I'm looking ultra fine.